it feels like every year we go into the season and there is this groundswell for one of these two teams, if not both of them, that this is their year. This is it. Look at who they are. Look at all the talent they have. And my argument is not that they don't have talent. My argument is, what is the difference from last year to this year? Like, what about the Bills is different than a year ago? What about the Ravens is different than a year ago?
It's That Football Show here on KC Sports Network. Tucker Franklin hanging out with Matt Verderame on your Friday edition of That Football Show. Thank you to our sponsors, Ben Holiday Bottled in Bond Bourbon and Holiday Distillery. Might go ahead and start pouring me up a glass, Matt, because we got a show for you today. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's recording on a Friday for Memorial Day weekend.
Yep,
I'm feeling good. I'm hoping the weather is going to be good for Memorial Day. It's touch and go. It's touch and go. I know out in Kansas City, a lot of rain is expected. Out here in Illinois, it's going to be cloudy. It's supposedly going to be cloudy, although it's supposed to be sunny in the mid-60s the whole weekend otherwise. So maybe lucking out a little bit there. But it should be good. No complaints. Just looking forward to the long weekend and hanging out and relaxing. Although for us, does it really matter? It's a long weekend.
It doesn't. I got to do stuff on Monday anyway. Right. So, I mean, shout out to everybody who does get Memorial Day. Shout out to, the people that we are remembering with the fact of today of the fallen veterans. We appreciate their ultimate sacrifice as well. But yeah, in this business, we've quickly learned, Matt, that there's no such thing as a holiday in the business that we operate in, because the Chiefs playing obviously on both Thanksgiving and Christmas. And look, content really never stops here. That's why we're with you here today. The content doesn't stop, even though the news might. It's a pretty darn slow time in the NFL.
It is a very slow time in the NFL. It is a very slow time. There's no way around that. I've filled my time by just wanting to throw myself into traffic after watching Game 1 of the Knicks.
Yeah. I wasn't going to bring it up. I wasn't.
Carrington brought it up for 10 solid minutes on radio, live radio the other day. And I was like, how do you feel about that? And I was like, honest to God, man, how do I feel about it? I mean, obviously not great, but I've been a Knicks fan for 30 years. I never at any point in that game thought the game was over.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't start relaxing. I mean, obviously, with up 14 with 2.5 minutes left, if you said to me, who do you think's going to win? You'd be out of your mind not to say the team winning by 14 points.
Yeah.
There was, at about, when they got the game to within 5 with 30 seconds left, I was like, they're absolutely losing this game. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they're going to lose this game. And it took a miracle shot by Halliburton and all that, but fine. The Knicks put themselves in position. So, yeah, other than that, I'm doing just dandy. Tonight, I'm not watching the game live. I can't do it to myself. I'm going to record it. I'm going to go enjoy some pickleball with friends and have a few beers. And then I'm going to come back. And I'm going to do something that's really crappy for a fan that takes pride in his team. I'm going to start watching that game. And if they get down by more than 6 points, I'm just going to start fast forwarding. Because I am to the point with them, I'm not putting myself to 2.5 hours of hell to watch, Reggie Miller just sit there on TNT and be, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. It's like, Reggie, listen, you and I have the same amount of rings. Okay, bud?
Fair.
All right. Also, the only thing I will say about the game that annoyed me, it's really not even that they lost, because they're the Knicks. That's what they do.
Yeah.
Halliburton, buddy, be original. First of all, you're not Reggie Miller, okay? And you're unbelievably lucky that shot. The shot was terrible.
Yeah.
It hit the back rim and went 18 feet in the air and fell through the hoop. Don't give me the choke crap like Reggie Miller. At least Reggie, when he did it, it was original. And also, he's one of the greatest shooters I've ever seen. You're Tyrese Halliburton. You're a really good passer and stuff. Don't give me that. Come up with something, that's yours. You're not like Walmart Reggie Miller, okay? Which is essentially what happened in that moment. But yeah, the Knicks. I will say right now to everybody curious, the most Knicks way the series is going to go, they will win game 2. and they'll win it in a way that you're like, God, they should have been up 2-0, but they're not.
Right.
Then they'll split in Indy. I don't know how they'll do it, but they'll win 1 of 2 in Indianapolis. They will come back. Everybody's going to be like, all right, Knicks are fine. 3-game series, 2 at home. They will immediately lose game 5. And they will play awful doing it. Then they will win game 6. They will go with all the gritty performance. They'll win game 6. And then game 7, God only knows. It's in God's hands at that point. Any outcome is on the table. Like, the only outcome that won't happen is they won't win comfortably. Like, that won't happen. Which is why game 6 against Boston was so, like, shocking.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was up at the lake house with my dad watching that game. They got 27 points at halftime.
Right.
And we were like, well, they've got to at least get close to blowing this, right? Like, that's just what they do. And they literally, I don't think, ever led by less than, like, 30-some-odd points in the fourth quarter. Everybody was, look at the Knicks fans making, like, a mockery of this series, like, outside celebrating. I'm like, the celebrations because they beat the Celtics, and half of it is nobody can believe that this didn't come down to like a buzzer beater. Okay.
Right.
So yeah, the Knicks have caused me deep psychological and emotional trauma. I will work through it as time goes on. In the meantime, I hope Tyrese Haliburton scores 0 points this game, and all the Knicks just give him a choke sign. Although the Knicks did deserve the choke sign, let's be honest. But still, I'm hurt and I'm down bad.
I will say, as an incredible neutral, I don't care about either of these teams. As a neutral in the series, I thought the choke was pretty savage. When it was a 3, when you thought it was a 3, I was like, oh fuck.
That's also hilarious. It wasn't even a 3.
Right. If it was a 3 and he did that and it was like a walk off, like I think you go like, oh shit. But the fact it had to go to overtime, not quite, doesn't hit quite as hard. It's still is he was thinking about that, right? That was in his
I guess if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure he did it last year too.
Oh, I didn't know he did that last year.
I'm pretty sure he did that last year in a game. And it's like, hey, Tyrese, like, you're not Reggie Miller. Like, stop. It's like if years from now, the Chiefs have a great player and they just do all the Travis Kelce celebrations after they score touchdowns. It's
Dylan Raiola is what it is. It's the Nebraska quarterback.
Yeah. It's weird. Like, just do your own thing. Like, it's weird. Like, every once in a while, I wasn't sure, but like Tyrese Haliburton just basically tries to be Reggie Miller, but like scores 10 points a game less. It's just very bizarre. It's like, all right, it's enough out of you. It's enough. Like, just like. By the way, if anyone should have the right to do that, it was Neesmith. Who hit?
Yeah, it's true. He was balling
in threes. Like, Tyrese Haliburton is unbelievably fortunate that shot went in, and it wasn't even a 3, and he's running around. So, like, bro, Neesmith is the guy. If Neesmith wanted to freaking do that in the face of everybody in the stadium, hey, fine.
Right.
Hey, Tyrese Haliburton did nothing in the last 2 minutes of that game, and then hit an unbelievably lucky shot. They're running around celebrating. It's like, all right, it's enough out of you. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sure everybody came to the show to listen to me talk about that.
Well, I hope they did, because there's certainly no football things to talk about. I mean, that's what we were in the midst of talking about, is that, the NFL calendar has slowed down. This is one of the only 2 months out of the year that you can actually sit and take a deep breath when it comes to the NFL schedule. So, nevertheless, we are here. We're going to be power ranking later, so make sure you stick around. We're getting back to the roots of power rankings. We're not getting with any convoluted categories. We're just going to power rank sodas. That's what it is. Power ranking sodas. Stick to the second half of the episode. We'll be doing that. But look, I do think we hit the NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs. The Hurricanes can't win in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Hurricanes, that series is over now.
Yeah, the Panthers are a wagon. Those Ice Cats.
God.
Buddy, they are so good.
The Hurricanes are like what the Chiefs were in the 90s.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
Really good every year. Super like well coached and just really like
great home crowd.
Yeah. But then like the playoffs happen and they get in there and they're like, oh right, that team's just better and more time, and we're gonna just choke like dogs now. I feel like that's Carolina. Like, I feel like that's what the Hurricanes are.
Yeah.
No, the Panthers are ridiculous.
Their
team, for anyone who's unaware, by the way, they won the Cup last year. And they played the Hurricanes, and this was like going to supposedly be a series like Carolina was going to be really good. And, well, there were 2 games that were in Carolina, and Florida's up 10-2 in the aggregate. That's all you need to know about that. That series is over 4 games. We might get a Stanley Cup final rematch.
Oh, there's a very good possibility.
Although Dallas is up 1-0 in the series, but
Dallas is up 1-0 in the series. Edmonton, the whole playoffs have kind of been like this come from behind team. The third period, never count out the Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. Can't count out either of those guys. Correct. But then the Stars kind of flipped the script on them. They scored, was it 5 unanswered or something like that in the third?
They got down early and then they came back with vengeance because they won the game 6-3.
Yeah,
they scored 5 in the third period. They're 3-1.
Yeah,
that's it, baby. They might score 5. They might give up 5. Like, who knows?
I think Skinner's still their goalie, right? They haven't had who's the other one that come back?
Yeah,
who was
Skinner's the
Picard. Picard was playing pretty good, and then he got hurt. I wonder too. I wonder how much Stolarz getting hurt for the Leafs hurt them in that series against the Panthers. I think the Panthers are a wagon either way, but like they didn't have to play Joseph Wall, who was obviously the backup. I wonder how much that really hampered the Leafs. But nevertheless, that's a franchise that cannot win anything, that I think is destined not to win anything.
Yeah, the Maple Leafs are the Bills of the NHL.
That's a great comp. Phenomenal comp.
Like the Bills just, and by the way, like Buffalo's like Toronto's football team too. So it's just awesome times for them. But like, it's always the same. You're like, oh, this is it. This is their year. You know, Josh Allen is like Austin Matthews. You're like, here they come. And it's like, actually, no, here they don't. No, they're just going to lose. The only difference is the Maple Leafs just lose to different teams every year, where the Bills pretty much lose to Chiefs every year. So that actually might be a good way to segue in what we're going to talk about, considering we've lost the audience at 11 minutes in. We've spent time talking about how much I hate the Knicks, and we've talked that the Stanley Cup playoffs, so I'm sure like 8 people in here are excited about.
That's true. Brad Marchand is basically their Patrick Mahomes, though.
True.
So I think that does kind of even out. But yes, Matt, thank you for bringing that up, because what we want to talk about today is something a little bit more big picture when it comes down to it. As we mentioned, there's no real news going on. We talked about the rule changes. You don't want to hear about it. We don't want to talk about them anymore, or the lack thereof rule changes, I guess I should say. But when you look around this year, everybody and their dog is always hopping on who can beat the Chiefs. It's the Ravens year. It's the Bills year. It's the Chargers year. And Matt, you asked me before the podcast, what makes this any other different? What makes this year different for these two teams, for these 3 teams, than what it has been in years past? And I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, I wanted to talk about this. Well, really, let's be honest with the audience for 2 reasons. One is there's nothing else to talk about.
Right. Yeah.
And B, because I think sometimes like this, so when I'm over at Sports Illustrated at this time of the year, I'm usually writing bigger picture stuff because there's not as much day-to-day stuff, obviously. And
right.
We have some different things. Like we have our 32 teams or 32-day series coming up, and I'm writing half of those. And but a lot of it's like stuff for the NFL Preview magazine and like much bigger picture type stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think when you look at the NFL going into this season, right? Like I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, there's probably like a half dozen teams you seriously look at and go, all right, that team might be able to go the distance. Yeah. Kansas City's obviously in that group. But 2 of the teams we talk about, it feels like every year, is Baltimore and Buffalo. And rightfully so. They both have great quarterbacks. They have track records of being in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. They, defensively, especially Baltimore, are always very good. Buffalo is a little more hot and cold with that, but still, they've had some excellent years defensively under McDermott. And yet, it feels like every year we go into the season and there is this groundswell for one of these 2 teams, if not both of them, that this is their year. This is it. Look at who they are. Look at all the talent they have. And my argument is not that they don't have talent. My argument is, what is the difference from that, from last year to this year? Like what about the Bills is different than a year ago? What about the Ravens is different than a year ago? And you could also extend that to the Chargers, who every year are apparently going 15-2, and then just can't beat the Cardinals on Monday Night Football. And it's like, okay, never mind, they're the Chargers. That's the thing that I look at and go, okay, based on this offseason, why are the Chargers or the Ravens or the Bills going to beat the Chiefs any more than in past years when they haven't been able to do it? Now, if you want to say it's variance, okay, fine. Like that's the argument because otherwise, I don't know. I don't know what the argument is that those teams were just better. Not even than the Chiefs, just better than what they were a year ago, and they weren't better than the Chiefs. That's my, issue with the whole argument.
And I think that's interesting too, because it feels like, from our perspective, look, and sometimes it's tough when we look at the Chiefs team so closely, right? We're looking at it so much, and you can see the imperfections maybe a little bit more than somebody on the outside looking at the Chiefs can see it, just because we're so locked in on this team. Man, I feel like this Chiefs team got better as a whole, and I don't know if you could say necessarily the same thing about the Ravens. They brought a lot of the guys back. I know they had a big kind of like run it back type year. They add DeAndre Hopkins to that wide receiver room, which okay. And doesn't really move the needle a whole bunch. The Bills didn't really do a whole lot to really move the needle for me though either. But look, Josh Allen was able to get it done with a cast of characters that I didn't think he was going to be able to get it done with, much like Patrick Mahomes did in that 2023 season, the one that they won the Super Bowl with. Matt, also sidebar, don't know how the hell they won that Super Bowl. I think about that a decent amount of like, how did they win that Super Bowl? That was like the worst regular season we've seen from Patrick Mahomes ever. And then they still win the Super Bowl. Like that is absurd. And that's part of the reason of like, the Chiefs can look bad in the regular season, and then the sample size that you have is they win the Super Bowl that year. What makes it any different that the Chiefs could go 10-7 and then not go on a run and win the Super Bowl? They have Patrick Mahomes. They have a phenomenal winner. And here's the thing about like the Ravens, like Lamar Jackson has proven in the playoffs, he doesn't necessarily win in the playoffs. You got to try to get that proverbial monkey off your back if you're Josh Allen when it comes to the Chiefs, because they're the big scary boogeyman and you guys can't beat them in the playoffs. Like that's a real thing. These are all really real mental hurdles for these teams to overcome. And I don't think they should be minimized necessarily, because when they see the Chiefs, they might say that they're not scared, but like in the back of their head, they're like, oh, well, we haven't beaten this team in 4 years. In the last 4 years, this team has eliminated us every single time. I don't know what makes that different. Does it have to be a coaching change? Should the Bills change coaches? I don't know what it needs to be in Buffalo for them to try to get over that hump.
I don't know if it's coaching change or if it's just finally figuring out how to beat them in a playoff game, and maybe that is doing something different, like schematically, it's doing something wildly different.
Right. Yeah.
But that's hard to do because when you are, when you're that successful, like you are who you are for a reason. You're good.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that they haven't been good enough to beat Kansas City. And so, they've ended up on the short end 4 out of the 5 years and so on and so forth. But I just look at this offseason and say, okay, who did Buffalo add to the team? Like meaningfully. I'm not talking about some guy who's a UDFA. Like who did they meaningfully add? Let's put all the draft classes aside for a minute, because every team adds a draft class. And I don't know that anybody feels like we don't know if one is demonstrably better than the other, right? We don't know that. We could sit here all day long. I mean, the Chiefs got a better grade than Buffalo probably universally, but like, who knows? That doesn't mean it's necessarily better. They might, Maxwell Harrison might be Darrell Green. We don't know. Who knows? Right? They added Josh Palmer at receiver, and they added Nick Bosa. That's pretty much what they did. That is, and they lost Rasul Douglas. They really didn't change much otherwise. They lost Matt Collins. He played a decent amount for them. Like they lost him. But they're pretty much the same team. The Ravens, you couldn't find a team that didn't change last. Nothing changed. Right. Now, they lost Patrick McCary, who's kind of like their do-it-all lineman, who was a starter at times. A lot of times he was somebody who he was like kind of the first backup. But, the biggest thing that happened to the Ravens was Darius Washington tore his Achilles in the offseason. So he's going to miss the whole year, which is a big loss because he actually played really well for them. But they're replacing him with Malachi Starks, who's a first-round pick.
Right. Good football.
So, then you go to the Chiefs. The Chiefs, I mean, they lost Justin Reed. They lost to Sean Wharton. They traded away Tooney. They essentially gained, they signed Jalen Moore.
Mm-hmm.
they essentially gained Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown. And that's where and then the Pacheco and Amena who are healthier. They signed Christian Fulton. But here's where I think it's interesting with the Chiefs. And this is where I would actually argue that the Chiefs have the biggest reason to feel like they got better. I don't know that Buffalo or Baltimore did anything. I'd sit there and be, oh, that team's better.
Right.
I don't care if they signed Josh Palmer. I don't care. Like, it's fine. He's Matt Collins. Great. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Joey Bosa is going to play 7 games. Like, I don't care that they signed those guys. Baltimore literally did nothing. Like, Baltimore lost Brandon Stevens and now our Darius Washington injury. And other than that, I mean, honest to God, did nothing.
Yep.
Other than signing DeAndre Hopkins. The Chiefs can sit there and say, look, not that they brought in a ton of guys. I mean, Christian Fulton and Jalen Moore were the 2 big signings. But, like, the Ravens and Bills did not have massive injuries last year. If you go and look at them, I'm not saying certain guys in games here and there, but, like, they didn't have massive injuries. The Chiefs had massive injuries. Like, the Chiefs were missing who for 10 games? First 10 games of the year, I think it was.
Yeah.
Pacheco missed a majority of the season. Hollywood Brown played 2 games. Rashee Rice played 3 1/4. I mean, those aren't like bit guys. I mean, those are massive, especially Rice and Amena. Those are massive guys. Like, that would be my argument. If you want to argue that the Chiefs got better, that's your argument. Is they basically added Rashee Rice to this team. They basically added Hollywood Brown and Charles Omenihu and Isaiah Pacheco. Also, and I know this is a little thing, like Harrison Butker missed a significant amount of time. Now, in the end, their kickers actually did pretty well, so it's not that I think is a huge factor.
Right.
But I'll give you another guy. Jalen Watson missed most of the year.
Yep.
All these guys, like the Bills were not missing guys to that degree all year. They weren't. The Ravens were extremely healthy last year. So like, I would actually argue that the gap is bigger between the Chiefs and the rest of these teams now. Now, does that show up in the record? I don't know, because the Chiefs had one of those years where like they just found ways to win all these crazy games. But here's the rub of that. I think the gap might be closer in the regular season in terms of the records, although the Bills only finished the game back in the Chiefs anyway. Or 2 games back. But the gap might be bigger in the playoffs. And that's what matters. Because I can tell you right now, ask Buffalo and Baltimore, the Chiefs don't give a shit if they got to go there and play them. Okay? They don't care. If you don't believe me, go back and watch the 2023 playoffs.
Right.
Like, they're not going to care. I actually think the gap is bigger now than it was a year ago. And it's certainly bigger than it was 2 years ago when the Chiefs basically didn't have an offense and somehow won the Super Bowl. So I mean, I would argue that the Chiefs are better positioned now than they have been at any point in the last 2 years against these teams.
I think it's definitely an interesting conversation to have. It does feel like that the Chiefs team is, I don't want to say being slept on, right? Because I don't think that's necessarily true, but I don't think they're being properly rated. As you mentioned, getting Rashee Rice back is huge, and there's legitimately zero buzz about him getting a suspension. Like, there's nothing.
It is not at all.
And that's weird, but no news is good news, right? When it comes to this in this situation. I find that whole situation incredibly bizarre, but getting Rashee Rice to this team, and you go back and you watch those first, 3 games? I think he got injured in week 4 against the Chargers at the very beginning. He was going to set a receptions record. Like, he was on pace to break it in, I think, 16 games. Like, it was like the record was set already in 16 games, right? Back in the day. But he was on pace to break that record. And the way that the Chiefs wanted to use him was exciting. Like, you look at some of those games, you watch some of those games, and the way that Rashee Rice was running after the catch, getting the ball and looking dynamic with his athleticism. Will that still be there with his knee injury? Who knows? I think that the wide receiver room is a very intriguing room. Hollywood Brown as well could be one. I don't want to put too high of expectations on Hollywood Brown. I think he would be a very good number 3 wide receiver, right? Like, that would be phenomenal for Hollywood Brown if he's there. He didn't quite look as fast as he had been. I know his shoulder doesn't necessarily affect that. But he didn't look as quick as he had in Arizona, right, when he came back and played those last playoff in the playoff run and everything like that. The big part's going to be the offensive line, right? I think we've been talking about this for so long when it comes to the Chiefs, and the Chiefs offense is going to be the offensive line. Getting rid of Joe Thuney to the Chicago Bears, filling that with Kingsley Suamataia. Is it going to be Josh Simmons or is it going to be Jalen Moore? We'll have to find out. But all of that is still seemingly up in the air. But you talk about just the tools and the weapons around Patrick Mahomes. It feels like this might be one of the best wide receiver rooms Patrick Mahomes has had since Tyreek Hill has left the Chiefs. And you feel a lot better about the direction of the offense heading with how they've been able to, number one, draft these skill position players and also develop them as well when it comes to Rice and Worthy. Worthy looked really good at the end of the season. In the Super Bowl, he was the only one to score touchdowns. He was the only one to get open. So I have a lot of high hopes for Xavier Worthy. We'll see how it goes. I do feel like that the Chiefs team could be better this year than they were last year. The defense, now on the defensive side of the ball, they lost Justin Reed. Very good football player. That seems like personnel-wise, I think this is interesting because personnel-wise, they could be worse, but I think schematically, when you look at the players that they added for the team, for the players that they replaced, right? For the ones that left and the one that added, so kind of how they replaced that defense, the way that they schematically fit in those other players, I think it makes their defense better. I know it doesn't really make any sense, but the way that Christian Fulton adds the versatility to the cornerback room to have Trent McDuffie going, it was something we've talked about on the podcast a lot. To have him operate more inside allows more flexibility for the defense and Steve Spagnuolo to do a lot more different things than he had done last year with that as well. So I think that while it could seem weird why they got worse personnel-wise, but a better schematically on the defensive side of the ball, I feel like they did. I feel like that coming into this season, I feel a little bit better about the depth of the cornerback room specifically. You talked about Jalen Watson's injury. He gets hurt. They couldn't cover anything for outside of Trent McDuffie.
No,
they were getting picked on. And I feel a whole lot better if they have an injury on the back end to have somebody step in there and play than what I did a year ago. So I do feel a lot better. And I think you can see that how the Chiefs approached their UDFAs, right? I think that they didn't sign very many UDFAs. So it feels like that's a sign to us, or I guess I'm reading in between the lines here, that they feel like their roster is pretty much set if they're not going to bring in a bunch of UDFA guys to try to compete for spots or even be on camp bodies. It feels like they've got a pretty solid roster right now, and they feel pretty comfortable with their depth and how everything's shaken out.
Yeah, I think it's probably fair. I think it's I think the biggest loss they had is Reed in the sense that Hicks is a good player, but he's an unknown quantity to some extent.
Yeah.
I do. If anybody who was a Chiefs fan heard me say this, they'd be like, you're such a homer, but it's really the truth. I actually really feel a lot better about that room after they signed Mike Edwards. Because Mike Edwards, that guy, he has played in this system and he's played very well in it.
Yeah.
He's not. Look, sometimes guys in certain roles are just really good, and then they go elsewhere and they're not that good. Whatever, they're asked to do different things. Mike Edwards in Buffalo was a disaster. Mike Edwards in Kansas City can just play. He's just good at it. He's good at doing what Spags asks him to do. So even though I think they lost, losing Reed does significantly matter. Adding Edwards to me also significantly matters to this team. I'm not saying he's anywhere near the player Justin Reed is. He's not. What I'm saying is he gives them a third safety that they can rely on. And if somebody gets hurt, Mike Edwards can play and it's not a disaster. He showed that. He played every snap back in the 2023 playoffs for the most part. We went over that not that long ago. The linebacker room is basically the exact same, but you're right. There's better corner depth. I think there's better depth up front on the D line. Even though they lost Ward, they added more bodies. And some of that is rookies, so we'll see how that plays. And then the other thing is people keep talking about the left tackle spot. And God knows I have. I've talked about it as much as anybody. But there's one thing that is true here. It's not going to be worse. I don't know if it's going to be. I don't know how much better it's going to be. There's no fucking way that it's worse than it was last year. I mean, they started 4 left tackles last year.
Yeah.
and two of them were Sumati and Wanye Morris. Like, there is no way they're worse. There's also no way that they're worse at receiver. They might not be better, depending on what you get out of Brown and how healthy Rice is. But I would argue, like, if you said to me, even odds, you got to gamble on, are they the same, worse, or better? The thing I wouldn't gamble on is worse. I'd probably gamble on they're better, because if Rice is back and he's healthy, they're better, significantly better. And Worthy's coming into his second year. So, I mean, I would argue that they're pretty obviously better in most spots. And look, that's going to be the big thing to watch this training camp is, how well they play on the left side, all these different things. But yeah, like, they, to me, right now, are better than they were.
I mean, the biggest talking point going into training camp is going to be what wide receiver 6. Is that going to be what the biggest position battle that we have?
Well, left tackle.
Well, you know who's making the roster, though. Roster battle wise, I think it's like that might be it. But left tackle, you're right, is the biggest position battle in terms of who's going to start. But I think if you are interested in who's making the roster and who's not, if you look through it, the KC Lab is going position by position, doing like basically a deep dive into personnel that they have in the position. Talking about strengths, weaknesses, everything like that. There's a pretty clear delineation of like where like the guys, the roster locks are, essentially. And you feel pretty good already kind of going into training camp of like, all right, this is probably what the roster is going to look like. I don't know if there's going to be a ton of surprises in training camp.
I went through this. Where the hell did I go through this? It might have been my own pod. Where I went through the roster and tried to figure out how many guys I felt like were on locks. And I think I came up with 45. Or like those 45 guys, like they would have to like retire to not make the roster. And I didn't even include guys like Juju, who I'm like, that guy's probably gonna make the team, but like there's a world where he doesn't.
Yeah. Right.
45 guys they're just making this team. Yeah. Like there's just no way in hell they're not making the team. And I remember thinking, well, I came up with 45 locks. Like there were another 3 to 4 guys where I'm like, those guys are borderline locks. So yeah, I mean, they're not exactly going to camp looking to make 20 roster decisions. Like, Veach is going there smoking a corncob pipe, drinking a spritzer. He's going, all right, let's figure out the last 6 to 8 spots on this roster and call it a day. I mean, that's pretty much what you're looking at.
Yeah, it's a spot that the Chiefs always seemingly find themselves in with their roster, which is a good spot to be in. It is a good spot to be in. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, we are going to power rank our favorite sodas. Matt's got a Fresca in his hand for the audio.
We'll see if it makes the list, or if it was just in the fridge.
We will see, but you're going to have to stick around after the break to find out. Chiefs.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
It's playoff time, and if you're still just watching games, then you're missing out. With Pick 6 from DraftKings, you can turn your hoops knowledge into real cash. Just make your picks, track your score, and if you hit all 6, you're looking at bigger payouts than Prize Picks Flex Plays. Nobody's dropping better payouts than Pick 6. Hit 6 picks, and that's 25 times your cash. And if you beat your competitor, you could be looking at a 500 times bag in your pocket. And right now, new customers get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry. The playoffs are on, so why not take a shot at making a little money while you're watching? Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN to play $5 and get $50 in bonus picks. Better payouts, bigger wins, only on Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. Terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Matt, quickly before we hit power rankings, today, as we're recording this podcast, is the final episode of Around the Horn. I don't know the feelings or any sentimental value that Around the Horn has for you as a child. I can remember growing up, coming home from school and seeing that 4 o'clock, 4:30 Central Time time slot of Around the Horn PTI. That is those two shows are very ingrained in my head. As I would come home from school, the first thing I could do, turn on ESPN. Those are the two shows that are on when you finally get home from school. So not having Around the Horn on the TV now, do I watch terrestrial ESPN very often? No, but it's always one of those things where it's nice to know that it's there. But Around the Horn will no longer be there after, golly, how many years on the air was Around the Horn there? November 4th, 2002 was when it debuted. Over 4,900 episodes. Heck of a run by a TV from a TV show there on an all sports platform.
It's funny because you say 4 o'clock. For me, it was 5 o'clock.
Right? Yeah.
I watched Around the Horn, and I watched it pretty consistently. I loved PTI.
Yeah.
Pardon the interruption. It was I watched PTI every single day for years on end. In fact, when I went to college, it was completely unoriginal. I was on the TV station in college with a buddy of mine, and we did a show called Excuse the Inconvenience, which was the same, like everything. Everything was the same. The graphics were the same. And I actually met Wilbon while I was in college, and I gave him a DVD copy of the show. I was like, I just want you to know you inspired this. And he was like, such a nice, I'm sure he never watched 2 seconds of it, but such a nice guy.
Yeah.
Really was awesome to meet him. Can't say the same for Kornheiser, but Wilbon was awesome. But in any event, to be fair to Tony Kornheiser, I met him for like 30 seconds, might have been having a bad day.
Yeah.
Sure, he's a nice guy. But Wilbon was very gracious. Anywho, yeah, man, it was sad to see they're canceling Around the Horn. It is a show that you can sit there and say, hey, I don't care, I didn't watch it, or yeah, I loved it. But like, you can't deny that if a show's on for 22 years, it has some kind of an impact in the space, right? I mean, it had to have. And it's funny now, like, being in this chair and getting to know, I know a lot of the people who are panelists on the show now.
Uh-huh.
I talk with Kevin Clark every once in a while. Like, I know Kevin. If I see, hey, man, what's up? How you doing? Like, not going to say like we're best friends going out to dinner today, but yeah, if I see Kevin at the Super Bowl, we'll stop and talk to each other and chat, and catch up. How's your family? How's the wife? How's your son? Whatever.
Yeah.
So that's been really cool. That's been really cool to see that. Listen, ESPN and hell, TV in general is not what it was
20
years ago for obvious reasons, but it is still a meaningful thing. I think the show deserves a big salute because that is a hell of a run to have on TV. I don't care what spot you're in, what you're talking about. 22 years, it's not nothing.
It isn't. Tony Reale did a phenomenal job with that show. Started as like the stat boy, I think, on PTI when he would do the errors and corrections.
Yep.
A great bit from them, by the way. And he was the anchor for that show, and it's such a fun concept for a show, and arguably maybe it sparked all these sports debate shows, right? That you see go on now. More of these, not necessarily. I don't think it inspired hot takes, right? But it inspired more of a debate type format. Yeah. I loved the idea of the points and winning arguments and stuff like that, but it was all basically just Tony's opinion. Yeah. If he agreed with you, you got the points. I like that. But I mean, look, a lot of these guys like Jay Donde, Kevin Blackstone, too, like they bring you up these people that then you follow, and then you start to know what they do. And I thought it was a really good vessel for that. Mina Kimes. Like, the first time I found out about Mina Kimes was through Around the Horn. She was one of the panelists on Around the Horn. Sarah Spain is kind of the same way. Using Around the Horn is more of a way to show off and the other personalities that you have on the network. I thought was a phenomenal way for ESPN to do it. Nevertheless, the show going away. Woody Page, all-time wins leader, 688. We'll see who wins tonight.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, maybe you saw the tweet, but do you know who the top 5 wins leaders are on this?
I do. I'm looking at it right now. So it's
okay, yeah. I will say I would have guessed Woody Page.
Yeah.
I would have guessed Kalashaw. I would have guessed Plaschke. I don't know if I would have guessed Kevin Blackstone and Jay Adonda. I certainly remember them being on the show quite a bit.
Yeah, they were.
But I don't know that I would have said those guys. But I remember. I mean, I remember. So like when I watched that show, it just started really. Like I was in high school, so like I remember all those guys that I just mentioned. I remember Jay Mariotti, who I just never agreed with in general, and then went off the show, and I'll let people just do their own homework there. Yeah. But like I remember him being on there. But I remember a lot of like Jackie McMullen was on there. I used to love when Jackie McMullen was on. Yeah, man. I mean, there were a lot of different people, and I always appreciate about that show is they gave some people opportunities too.
Yeah,
and that's something that a lot of people in the big spaces of sports media and legacy media they don't. I'll share a funny story. I'm getting our power rankings, but it's kind of like, when growing up in New York, even though I didn't grow up in New York City, my local news was New York City.
Right.
So we would, my parents back in the day, they'd sit down and they'd watch the NBC. Typically, it was NBC News, and it wasn't the national news. It was the local. So like, Sue Simmons and Chuck Scarborough were on all the time, and they were just institutions. Like they were on forever. Like if I'm gonna try this, I can find this as I'm talking, but like they were on for, when I say decades, I mean decades, man. Like, okay, so Sue Simmons is now 82. She's 82 now. I mean, she was on in New York. Oh, God, I mean, it had to have been here. Okay. She was on from, make sure I'm right with this, 1980 to 2007 with Chuck Scarborough, and then she stayed on until 2012. Now, there was a time when in 2008 she got chastised because she just yelled out, "What the F are you doing?" on live air, which was good times. But
I think that would be pretty accepted in New York, truthfully.
Nobody even cared. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she was on, I'm seeing different dates, but she was on legitimately for like 35 years. Chuck Scarborough, who's 81 now, was on till last year from 1974 to 2024. Was just on just forever. Just welcome to the news for 50 years with Chuck Scarborough, okay? The point I'm driving at is my dad, even when I was in high school, so we're talking about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, used to yell at the TV like, just retire, give somebody else a chance. And like, but like nobody ever had a chance. I always appreciated that like shows like Around the Horn, others like gave people opportunities where it felt like so many other spots were closed off because like either somebody just stayed in the job forever or, the company never wanted to expand its mind. I don't know. And this ended up just being a shot at Chuck Scarborough, but you get the point.
No, I do. And that's what I'm saying with like when I did like Mina Kimes, like that's you feel like you discover people on Around the Horn. And that's what I really liked about the show as well. The game show format obviously makes it fun and digestible as well. So rest in peace to Around the Horn. I'm not sure what's gonna fill that slot in ESPN. I did see a report that they asked PTI if they wanted to do an hour and they said no. I thought that was hilarious. Like, we're not doing an hour.
No. They're probably going to fill it with like Stephen A. Smith screaming at a teleprompter. And that's depressing.
Yeah, it's going to be another debate show that's going to be really bad for
I will go on record, and I'll say this right here. Now, cold pizza ruined television.
Cold pizza ruined television?
That's what that show was initially called.
Really? Oh, I thought you were talking about actually cold pizza. And I was like, I enjoy cold pizza. Yeah, it's great.
No. Cold Pizza was a show on ESPN that launched First Take and all this other shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Cold Pizza was, let's see now, it lasted for 3 years. And in its original form was not bad in the sense that, like, it was really about a bunch of, they did like all kinds of different stuff. Like, it wasn't just a back and forth, like, argumentative show.
Yeah.
Jay Crawford and Kit Hoover were the original people on the show. But guess what else? Let's go. Skip Bayless. And that show was rebranded. It was from 03 to 07. It was called Pizza. And it was fine in that format. But what they realized was, what is the best part of the show? What gets the most ratings? When they scream at each other. So then in 07, it was rebranded as First Take. Cold Pizza ruined sports television. Ruined it. Because now we're stuck with these carnival barkers who scream at each other about takes they don't even believe in. They're the worst people in sports media. Stop listening to them. They're terrible.
I retweet that. Retweeted. All right, let's get into power rankings.
Let's do it.
We're power ranking soda 5-1. 5 being, still good. There's bad sodas. I assume you're not going to put it on your power ranking list. Yeah, it's still a top 5 soda. 5 being your the least favorite of the 5, and then 1 obviously being the best soda. Matt, since this was your idea, I'll let you have the honors. Number 5 soda for you, sir.
You might think I'd say Fresca because I have it in my hand, but I wouldn't say that. I have Fresca because it mixes well with Crown Apple.
It does, actually. That's a great mixer.
Yeah, so that's why I have it. I just happen to grab a cold can of Fresca on the way downstairs. So I will go with a refreshing Diet Coke from McDonald's. It's got to be from McDonald's. It feels like it's the only way. It feels like it's different at McDonald's.
Yeah.
Love a good Diet Coke. No calories, all the chemicals. Something's going to kill me anyway. Diet Coke at 5.
Might as well be a Diet Coke. I'm a big Diet Coke guy. I've been recently going to the zeros on a lot of the things, though, because it's a different sweetener.
It's not good for me.
Yeah. It feels like you're getting away with crime. Number 5, I got Fanta. I love a good orange soda. Okay. The orange Fanta. Yeah. There's something about it, nostalgic childhood about it. Every now and again, I'll grab an orange Fanta when I'm feeling in the mood for something sweet. Really, I got a bad sweet tooth. That's what I've been cursed with a bad sweet tooth.
Get in line.
Yeah, and so like that sometimes does fill that need for a sweet tooth. Number 4 for you.
Cherry Coke.
Ooh.
Love a good cherry Coke. Big fan. Thought about going Sprite. Thought about going something like that. Love cherry Coke, man. You get a real good, like a little sweet cherry Coke. Oh, that's awesome.
I was raised in a diet soda household, which ultimately was probably good for me because now when I drink like the heavy sodas, right, it's just like, whoa, that's way too sweet. So a lot of my experience to soda was diet soda. But this is one that you can't really get that. I think you can get zeros of it now. I love a good root beer. A good root beer at number 4. Put it in with a root beer float too. Maybe some vanilla ice cream. Yeah, root beer at number 4. It doesn't matter the brand, mug, A&W, Sparks, whatever it is. Root beer number 4.
Okay, we're gonna get the root beer in a momentarily for me. Number 3. See, to me, there's 3 that are at the top for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Crush orange soda. Love a good Crush. Basically, everything said about Fanta. It's like child, like that, or even like Sunkist. Like,
yeah,
those are the ones I grew up on as a kid. I used to. My uncle owns an Italian restaurant, and when I worked there in high school, we always had like those red, like plastic cups.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And I would just sit there and just back in high school, it didn't matter. I weighed 190 pounds. I'm sure a lot of people sounds like a lot, but for me, I was 6'2" and I was built pretty thick. Like 190 pounds was nothing. I used to sit there and just house pizza, cannolis, and Sunkist. Never gained a pound. Played sports constantly. It was great. Then went to college. Bam, 40 pounds in an instant. Had to lose that. We're still fighting that battle. That neither here nor there. Orange soda at 3 with a bullet.
I like that. Number 3, I got OG Coke. There's something about Coke. You just cannot go wrong with Coke. I do think there's 2 better, but Coke feels like it's the pioneer, it's the originator. And there's something about a nice ice cold Coke. Again, like you mentioned with the Diet Coke from McDonald's, the Coke recipe is different at McDonald's than it is anywhere else.
Yep.
And they have the straws too, so like it hits very different. I also love all these are way better out of the fountain too, is how I personally feel. Always better out of the fountain. That's my number 3. Number 2 for you, Matt.
Not even a question for me. It's Mountain Dew.
Oh man, I missed that one. I missed Mountain Dew on my list.
Mountain Dew. Actually, the Diet Mountain Dew's fine, but every once in a blue moon, I'm not a big I don't drink a lot of regular soda. It's probably like a handful out of a whole year. I'll probably have 3.
Yeah.
No, I'll have 2 diet sodas in a day. So that's a problem. What killed him? Well, as it turns out, enough aspartame to fill up the Atlantic Ocean. But yeah, I would say Mountain Dew at number 2. I love a good Mountain Dew.
I thought I didn't have Mountain Dew on my list, and I went back and I looked. Number 2 for me is a soda that I do drink a lot. It's Dr. Pepper. I think Dr. Pepper is a top tier soda. I do think it's better than Coke. If I'm having a choice anywhere, I'm getting Dr. Pepper. I also think this shouldn't play into our rankings. Same thing with Mountain Dew. I think the diet version of Dr. Pepper and the diet version of Mountain Dew taste most like their whole body versions, if that makes sense. I think those are 2 sodas that their diet versions taste most like it. Like Diet Coke and Coke, I think are 2 separate things. Like,
I agree.
Diet Coke does not taste like original Coke, but I think Diet Dr. Pepper tastes like Dr. Pepper. Diet Mountain Dew tastes like Mountain Dew. Dr. Pepper at my number 2. Your top spot, Matt.
Root beer. It's not even close.
Root beer. Wow.
I went to a place here a day after we went on a hike as a family, and my leg almost fell off. But we went afterwards. This place literally called Root Beer Stand, and it was just this little hole in the wall restaurant in the middle of nowhere in Illinois. Yeah, kind of a place that got a burger and some onion rings. Whatever, it's fine.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? We're getting scoop, reaching the scoop of ice cream. I'm not going to get that and a root beer. I'll behave myself. And I went to the counter. And I saw somebody in front of me buy a gallon of root beer that was just filled up in a gallon jug of milk that they had clearly just cleaned out and then just gave him root beer.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, "Hey, you sell that?" Yeah, it's $5 for a half gallon and $8 for a whole gallon. I was like, I'll take a gallon of root beer to go. And for 2 weeks, I just walk up to the fridge and just swing it and walk away. It's disgusting. It was a great. I'm pro with my root beer. I'm like you. I don't have a brand that I'm like, oh, it's definitely this one.
Right.
But the more vanilla I can taste in my root beer, the better. I want to be able to taste the vanilla, and that I could taste the vanilla in that. Man, it was awesome. So number 1, if I could pick any soda, A&W, I guess would be the one I would choose. But root beer.
There's a root beer stand that's in Independence called Mugs Up Root Beer.
Okay.
I've not been there yet. It has been something that I see and something that I need to go. But you gotta, if it's named after the root beer, I think you have to try it. Number 1 for me is going to be Mountain Dew Baja Blast. I think there's something about Mountain Dew Baja Blast that is, for me, I drank it a lot growing up, right? But it also feels very summery. It's a great soda, the mix of berry and then the Mountain Dew at the same time. The fact that Taco Bell has it all the time. I love Baja Blast. That is my favorite soda, number 1. I don't think you can top it. I do think Dr. Pepper is really close, but Mountain Dew Baja Blast specifically, I don't think sodas get any better than that.
Baja Blast is excellent. I will leave this podcast on this note. I had a buddy, best friend of mine, who is a police officer back in New York. Got called to a scene because somebody had OD'd. And they Narcan this individual.
Right.
And this person, after being given the Narcan, just projectile vomited Baja Blast all over him. And they woke up and they're like, "You owe me $3 because that was my Baja Blast." I saved this person's life. And they were irate that they threw up their Baja Blast. So whenever I hear that soda, that's the first thing I think of.
There's a cult following around Baja Blast. There really is.
That guy who was dead in briefly at the hotel. Yeah, well, guess what? He's with you. You guys go get one together.
Yeah, we can go get it. All right, that's gonna do it for this week's editions of That Football Show. Appreciate all of you guys hanging on all the way to the end of this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. One like equals one Baja Blast for you if you hit the like. Subscribe to become a ball knower. Other than that, I think that's gonna do it for Matt Verderame. I'm Tucker Franklin. Thank you to our sponsors, Ben Holiday, Bottled and Bomb Bourbon, Holiday Distillery. We'll talk to you guys next Wednesday.